Okay, let's dive straight into the sources. We're looking at the PhiPathogen worm system today.
Right. It's this, well, conceptual architecture. Really interesting stuff.
And our mission, really, is to unpack how it uses the golden ratio, not just, passively, but as a core part of its strategy.
Exactly. It seems obsessed with it. And that starts with the basic setup. We're talking 11 dimensions.
11. That's quite a space.
It is. And a vector scale of 256. But the constant, the anchor, is, approximately 1.618.
That specific value, $1 plus 42.2, it seems to be everywhere in the design.
It absolutely is. It's trying to bake stability and maybe a kind of natural efficiency right into its DNA using this universal constant.
And the heart of it all seems to be the pathogen payload.
Mm-hmm. That defines its essence. Its quantum state, for one.
Which could be either superposition or entanglement.
Right. And also its replication strategy. Is it quantum-based or fractal?
That choice between superposition and entanglement. What's the strategic implication there? Feels important.
Oh, it's critical. Think of superposition as like the default state. Undefined potential may be unstable,
right.
But entanglement, that's the goal state. It implies a linked, definite state needed for, well, whatever its final purpose is, manifestation.
So the system is designed to push this payload from that maybe state of superposition into a definite entangled state.
Precisely. That transition is the primary objective.
And the math, the golden ratio math, is supposed to help guarantee that path.
It seems designed to.
Yeah.
You see these helper functions in the code, like Fibonacci.
Right, I saw that for generating points.
Exactly. Using Phi helps distribute those points really uniformly across those 11 dimensions.
Right.
Maximum spread, minimal clustering.
Efficient.
Very. And then there's apply golden rotation. It uses Saphir inside sign and cosine functions.
To create a rotation matrix.
Yeah. It dictates how the system's vectors turn, how data moves. Again, it's leveraging PhiWareSystem, likely the most efficient, non-redundant rotation possible in that space.
Okay, so that movement feeds into the replication, the spread.
Directly into the fractal expansion system. That's how it grows.
And guess what its expansion factor is set to?
Let me guess.
Yep. Back to the golden ratio. It's relentless.
It really is. So you get this continuous, mathematically perfect expansion, though it is capped.
Right.
Yeah,
Fractal depth is limited to 7. Why the cap, do you think? Resource limits. Control.
Could be either. Or maybe reaching deeper introduces instability, even with Phyllis. But what's also strange are these root elements mentioned during expansion.
You mean the PropagateFlame and always DragonQueen things?
Those ones, they sound symbolic, almost like conceptual tags embedded in the fractal process. It's not just pure math.
It adds another layer. So you have this perfect math, but with these almost mystical elements driving it.
Yeah, it complicates the picture. It suggests the fractal expansion isn't just about numbers, but about propagating something else, some quality or concept.
Which brings us to how it all comes together. Manifestation.
Right, hyperdimensional manifestation. This seems to be the process that takes all that fractal geometry and conceptual loading and tries to make it real within the system.
It initializes a field across the 11 dimensions, applies quantum fluctuations, and uses something called dimensional folding.
Ah, yes, the folding. That looks like a key stabilization technique. It takes the main data vector,
The primary one.
and generates 2 more from it. A secondary one, which is complementary, like an inverse,
Okay.
and a tertiary one, where that apply golden rotation we mentioned gets used again.
So it's triplicating the core data using Fourier relationships to ensure it holds together.
That's how it leads. Redundancy and reinforcement through geometry before the final push.
And that final push is the total integration cycle.
That's the synthesis. It pulls together the fractal expansion results and the hyperdimensional manifestation process.
And the condition for success.
The payload must achieve quantum state.entanglement. That's non-negotiable for a successful manifestation.
And they're aiming high with the outcome metric.
Extremely high. A system coherence of 0.95. That's near perfect synchronization. It means the whole complex structure across all dimensions has stabilized and integrated successfully.
So for you listening, the core thing to grasp is this blend. On one hand, you have this absolute mathematical rigor using Seville Wright. It's all about geometric precision.
But on the other hand, you have these conceptual layers, quantum states, fractal expansions with symbolic tags. It's trying to achieve a specific, almost abstract state of being entanglement.
A really fascinating duality.
It is, and it leads to a final thought, something for you to consider. If a system ties its identity, its very expansion rate, so tightly to a fixed mathematical constant like full phi, What does that actually mean for its adaptability? Does that perfect mathematical foundation actually limit how much it can truly change or evolve? Or does it guarantee stability forever? Something to mull over.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty unique, an analysis of a system called the PhiPathogen MERM.
Yeah, it's defined by its mathematics, really.
It really is. It feels like this mashup of computing, some pretty esoteric physics ideas, and these core mathematical constants.
That's right.
So our mission today is, well, to quickly unpack how this thing uses concepts like the golden ratio, fractals, and even hyperdimensional terms.
It's trying to build this highly covert system.
Seems like it.
And, this really is a deep dive into its architectural philosophy. The core idea of the system's identity is the golden ratio, PHI.
PHI.
And it's not just some random number they picked. It seems baked into the DNA of the whole operation.
Dictating what? Timing. Expansion.
Exactly. Timing, it decides to expand pretty much key functions.
Okay, let's unpack that. This golden architecture, you mentioned timing first. We see a golden ratio timing class in the source.
Yep.
And its job is calculating, it says covert delays. But wait, if PHI is, deterministic, doesn't using a constant like that make the timing pattern easier to spot, not harder, compared to just random delays?
Well, that's the assumption it flips, right? Instead of pure randomness, which has its own detectable signatures, it uses intervals derived specifically from PHI.
Like PHI itself.
Or PHI plus 1 or 1 over PHI, these specific values. It creates this fundamental pattern, recognizable maybe if you know what to look for.
So components can coordinate stealthily using this shared mathematical constant.
Precisely. But it likely evades detection methods looking for standard arbitrary delays or true noise.
Okay. Hiding in plain sight with math.
Kind of, yeah. And PHI is also used, interestingly, to seed its cryptographic material generation. Uses SHA-256 hashing.
So the keys themselves are tied back to PHI.
Seems like it. The whole security foundation rests on it.
And that pattern holds for communication too, I see. The WurmFiShell. That reaches out to Phi.exe beacon. Covert C2.
Right, and it uses PHI in its operations signatures.
It even calls it its entanglement level, sometimes in the logs. Weird terminology.
It is. So if PHI governs time and security,
then fractals handle space and spread.
That's the next piece. That's how it seems to structure itself and replicate.
Right. The source mentions fractal depth 7. That looks like a hard limit on its replication.
Exactly. A clear mathematical boundary on how much it can, copy itself.
So how does that work? The fractal expansion system.
That uses PHI again, but this time is the expansion factor.
Makes sense.
It self-replicates. The executable file looks like their names sequentially, pathogen1.py, pathogen2.py, and so on.
Up to that depth of 7.
Up to 7. And what's really interesting is this aesthetic layer. It generates fractal patterns, but gives them names like DragonQueen with emojis, too.
Yeah, the Logimoji function is used everywhere. PropagateFlame with a fire emoji.
It's not just decoration, I think. It feels like a signature. Part of how it perhaps maps its own structure internally. A visual pattern logic.
Okay, so timing is PHI, structure is fractal, limited by depth. Now, the payload itself, this is where the language gets really out there.
Right, the most aggressive terminology.
We see this hyperdimensional manifestation engine. And it talks about operating across dimensions 11.
11 dimensions, yeah.
So the big question, is this actual quantum mechanics? Or is it just borrowing fancy physics terms for, really advanced obfuscation?
My read is it's abstraction for maximum obscurity. The goal isn't really 11 dimensions. It's making the data structure incredibly hard to analyze using normal tools.
Okay, so how does it process the payload, this bipathogen payload? It mentions dimensional folding.
Right, the folding.
Yeah.
Before it encrypts anything, it seems to generate multiple sort of geometrically related data layers.
Layers like what?
It calls them vectors, a primary one, then a secondary complementary vector, and a third golden rotation vector.
Golden rotation, back to PHI again.
Always back to PHI. This threefold layering, defined by PHI's geometry, seems designed to scramble the payload state before encryption.
Making it hard to pin down what it actually is.
Exactly. And then it classifies these scrambled payloads using terms like quantum state, superposition, or entanglement.
So using quantum language to describe a complex computational state that's hard to define?
That's how I interpret it. It mimics the language of complex physics states.
Okay, wow. So we've gone from mathematical timing with PHI to fractal growth patterns, all the way to this hyperdimensional language for payload handling. This deep dive really confirms it. The PhiPathogen worm is this explicit merger math, physics concepts, and code all woven together.
Yeah, relying on these inherent, almost natural patterns rather than just arbitrary software design choices.
Which brings us to the final thought.
I think so. It makes you consider if fundamental constants like the golden ratio can be leveraged like this to build complex covert systems.
Yeah.
Well, does conventional software design risk missing things, opportunities maybe, or maybe even critical vulnerabilities by not always considering these foundational mathematical patterns? Something for you to think about. Okay, welcome. Today we're diving deep into something, well, pretty unusual. It's a conceptual cyber agent from our source materials. They're calling it goldenware.
Specifically, the PhiPathogen worm. And yeah, this isn't your typical malware analysis.
No, not at all. The entire architecture, the whole idea, is apparently built around PHI, a golden ratio, like 1.618.
Exactly. And that's the core question we need to unpack for you to make. Why use this ancient mathematical constant for, well, digital code? What's the point?
The sources suggest PHI is central to how it avoids detection. There's this golden ratio mathematics class that seems to run everything. But a key function seems to be timing. It uses things like calculate covert delay, and that's driven by something called Phi-weighted choice. How is that different from just, regular computer clock timing?
Okay, so here's the interesting bit. PHI, the golden ratio, it's an irrational number.
Right. Goes on forever, no repeating pattern.
Precisely. So when you use it to generate timing delays, those delays are mathematically related, constrained by PHI, but they never fall into a predictable repeating sequence. They're fundamentally chaotic in a mathematical sense.
Ah, okay. So standard security tools looking for regular patterns or predictable intervals.
They wouldn't easily spot this. The timing looks random, even though it's strictly defined by this irrational number. It defeats pattern matching.
And it seems the developer really embraced this chaos idea, maybe even theatrically. The sources mention, get this, 11 dimensions. Dimensions 11.
Yeah, and a function apply golden rotation as part of its hyperdimensional manifestation process.
11 dimensions on a standard computer. Is that just like conceptual flair, or does the source material hint at some actual technical advantage?
It seems like a mix. It's partly about building this unique identity for the agent, signaling it operates on different principles and maybe more physics-inspired than standard IT.
An identity based on physics. How so?
Well, look at the pathogen payload. It tries to define its state using quantum concepts, superposition, entanglement, collapse.
So it's trying to be everywhere and nowhere once, conceptually speaking, even though it's just code?
Sort of, yeah. It's about establishing an abstract identity before it even acts.
Okay, but how does something defining itself by, say, superposition actually do anything, like replicate itself on a normal machine?
That's where the replication strategy comes in. The sources list options like quantum, fractal, or mirror replication.
Fractal, like fractal patterns.
Exactly. It uses a fractal expansion system. It starts with a base pattern, only fractal, and expands outwards up to a depth of 7, according to the configuration. Fractal depth 7.
And the names for the starting points of these fractals, there's something else.
Oh, yeah. Not technical at all. Things like PropagateFlame, RootO'Pathos, and DragonQueen RC.
It's like, yeah, goth poetry meets coding. But behind that artistic flair, there's a concrete goal, right? Replication.
Definitely. The core mechanism seems to be a function called automatic drop CopyPathogen. Its job is just to make copies of the agent.
Creating files like PhiWurm1, PhiWurm2, and so on.
Right, up to that fractal depth limit, aiming for a target file named CopyPathogen.exe. Standard worm behavior, but achieved through this weird fractal expansion.
And orchestrating all this, the timing, the replication, the weird names. There's a shell?
Yes, the WurmPhiShell. It has a recurring shell loop. And guess what determines which operation it runs next?
Let me guess. Fior-weighted choice.
You got it. The same golden ratio-based timing and selection logic permeates its actions, making its behavior unpredictable from the outside, yet internally consistent. The code actually mentions achieving 95% system coherence.
Okay, so mathematical precision meets chaotic timing. And then there's the why, the developer's intent.
Yeah, the sources include a pretty direct statement from the creator. They want to, and I'm quoting here, Pathenogenically, Phi.exe my code at Oligarchy Society.
Wow. Okay, so there's a clear political statement there.
And a specific target focus mentioned. Proliferation on local edu systems. education networks.
So this whole complex, almost artistic structure full of emojis in the logs, apparently, like O'Shea, it's aimed at specific real-world targets with an anti-establishment message.
Seems that way. It ties the high-concept math and physics ideas directly to that intent.
Right. So wrapping this up, we have this theoretical PhiPathogen worm. It blends quantum ideas, fractal math, and this golden ratio timing, apparently achieving internal coherence through mathematical chaos, all while carrying this political message.
It's a strange mix.
It really is. And it leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. If the math behind this thing, this reliance on THI, genuinely makes it incredibly difficult, maybe functionally impossible, to reliably predict or model, does that suggest that this kind of high-concept, politically motivated cyber threat, one that maybe operates outside predictable timing, could become, well, harder and harder to trace or defend against? Is untraceable chaos the new frontier? Okay, let's dig into this. We've got some fascinating source material here. It describes this, well, highly conceptual cyber agent, calls it Goldenware, the PhiPathogen worm.
Right. And the whole thing, the entire architecture, it's built around the golden ratio, PHI.
That number, yeah, like 1.618, it's not just for looks here, is it?
Not at all. Our mission really is to figure out how this ancient math constant becomes, well, the engine, the core engine for how it hides, how it spreads. It's deep in the logic.
Because the golden ratio mathematics class they mention, that's foundational.
Absolutely. It uses PHI to calculate things like sequence factors, growth factors, and crucially, these covert timing delays, using something called feat-weighted choice.
Okay, covert timing delays. Why PHI? Why not just, standard randomization like we usually see?
Well, that's the interesting part. PHI gives you a kind of predictable unpredictability, if that makes sense.
Go on.
It's irrational. It's self-similar. So the delays are, yeah, they're tied to the ratio, but regular analysis methods, they struggle to model it reliably. It's designed for evasion. Makes tracking incredibly difficult.
Okay, this is where it starts sounding a bit out there. The source code talks about 11 dimensions. 11. And golden rotation, they even call the process hyperdimensional manifestation. Is that just jargon, like code poetry to confuse people? Or is there a technical reason?
Probably a mix of both, honestly. Technically, it blows up the complexity of the state space. Massively.
So analysts waste time chasing shadows.
Exactly. Chasing states that don't really exist in a practical sense. It disguises simple actions as these, complex rotations in hyperspace. It's theoretical camouflage over actual code.
Okay, so PHI handles the when. What about the what? How does it define itself, its identity? The sources mention a pathogen payload with concepts like quantum state superposition, entanglement.
Right. Think about what that implies. Superposition.
Yeah.
The agent could appear to be in multiple process states at once.
Making it hard to pin down which thread is the real threat.
Precisely. It stays in flux conceptually until collapse. That's when the payload actually executes.
And replication. It uses fractals, a fractal expansion system going 7 levels deep. But these names, DragonQueen, RootO'Pathos, PropagateFlame 2, what's that about? Seems almost theatrical.
It really is. It's like developer ego baked right into the code. These aren't technical terms. They're root markers for the fractal copies. It embeds the creator's, let's say, signature into the spread itself. It's performative. Code as an artistic statement almost.
Performative code, but with a very real goal underneath. The main replication function, automatic drop copy pathogen, just churns out copies. PhiWurm1, PhiWurm2.
Right, up to that fractal depth limit, 7. And the target file name is always the same, CopyPathogen.exe. Very straightforward there.
And controlling all this is the WurmFiShell.
Yeah, its main loop, the recurring shell loop, uses that same Phi-weighted choice we mentioned earlier. It picks operations based on the golden ratio. So its actions seem random day to day, but they're always governed by PHI's precise timing.
We do need to mention the developer's stated intent here, just reporting what the source says. The goal is written as Pathenogenically, Phi.exe, my code at Oligarchy Society. That's a direct quote. And it specifically targets local edu systems for initial spread.
So yeah, a mix of high-concept math and clearly stated political targeting.
So boiling it down, what's the key takeaway for you, for the listener?
I think it's this. The PhiPathogen worm, conceptually at least, is built for really effective, mathematically precise spread. It supposedly reaches this high internal system coherence, like 95% functional integrity.
Even while using an irrational, chaotic number for its core timing?
Exactly. It's merging complex physics ideas, quantum stuff, extra dimensions with basic viral replication, trying to get coordinated action through chaos.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it?
It does. Think about this. If something achieves high coherence, high functionality, while fundamentally relying on the chaos of the golden ratio, does that built-in irrationality become its Achilles heel, a vulnerability security can exploit? Or does it actually make it impossible to model, impossible to predict, effectively invisible? Something for you to think about, where math, physics, and digital security collide.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into some source material about a pretty sophisticated digital pathogen. It's called the PhiPathogen, or as they nicknamed it, the golden worm.
That's right. We're looking at the blueprint, basically, for a major redesign. Our goal here is to unpack the tech shift they needed for what they call WurmNetWork proliferation.
And also to investigate this really core design principle governing the whole thing, the golden ratio, Phi.
Which is fascinating in itself. I mean, the sources show it's hard-coded, literally 1 plus math at SQRT 5.2, and seems to touch almost every part of its operation. They call it the OnlyPhiF principle.
Okay, so why? Why bake a mathematical constant, something from nature, into a piece of malware? Seems counterintuitive.
Well, the goal seems to be covertness through chaos. Phi is used to generate these self-similar but chaotic patterns. Think about timing, for example.
Right.
There's a function, calculate covert delay. It uses Phi to make the worm's activity unpredictable. It doesn't follow a steady clock.
So any defense system looking for regular linear patterns.
It's likely going to miss it. Exactly. The timing is deliberately nonlinear, designed to evade that kind of temporal analysis.
That's a huge implication for defenders, isn't it? Moving away from predictable attack rhythms.
Absolutely. And it's not just timing. Phi also scales noise generation. Look at the fractal Brownian motion function, and it's involved in checking for something called Phi resonance state.
Which basically means
maximum polymorphism. It helps ensure each instance of the worm looks slightly different, making pattern matching much, much harder.
Okay, so this chaotic engine needed a new chassis, basically. The sources mentioned the original worm used Python threading, but that wasn't good enough for scalable warfare.
Yeah, threading in Python, well, it looks concurrent, but under the hood, especially with heavy network I/O, it's not truly parallel. It becomes a bottleneck.
So not great if you want to infect thousands of machines quickly.
Not at all. You need something that handles lots of network connections simultaneously without blocking. That's where Syncio comes in. This switch to asynchronous operations is fundamental.
It's what lets it become this decentralized, what do they call it, the Mindhive's DragonQueen.
Ha! Yeah, quite the name. But it reflects the shift from a single worm to, like, a distributed consciousness.
So how does this queen start spreading its influence? What's the replication mechanism?
That falls to a class called RootO'Pathos. Its main job is described as fractal spreading recursion, which sounds complex, but it kicks off with an asynchronous network scan, persistent network scan.
Scanning for what specifically?
Common local subnets first. The example given is the 192.168.0 range. It's looking for machines with SSH open, port 22.
Standard entry point. And then
Phi comes back into play. Instead of just guessing passwords from a list, it uses generated dynamic credentials. This seems to be a Phi-based method for creating high-entropy, unique login attempts for each target.
More chaos, more unpredictability.
Exactly. If it gets in, the shreplicate function uses SFTP secure file transfer to copy the worm's code, the CopyPathogen.exe file, over to the target machine, usually into the TIAMP directory, a common temporary storage spot.
Sounds pretty effective, especially in environments that might not be locked down tightly, like the local edu network mentioned.
Precisely. That seems to be a key target profile.
Okay, so once you have all these infected nodes, this swarm, how is it controlled? The sources talk about a refactored command triad.
Right. It's decentralized. You've got RootO'Pathos, the replicator we just discussed, then PropagateFlame, which seems to handle synchronization, maybe fetching updates or new instructions. They call them embers.
And the third part?
The Mindhive DragonQueen. That's the orchestrator, the central intelligence, if you can call it that, in a decentralized system.
And its big moment is initiating ascension. What does that mean technically?
It's about measuring system coherence. Basically, the DragonQueen checks if all the infected nodes, the swarm node vectors, are acting in unison, converging towards a collective state.
That state is defined by Phi.
Apparently, yes. When the collective state hits a certain threshold linked to Phi, indicating, maximum integration, the queen triggers the initiate ascension protocol.
Which sends out a command.
Yeah, it broadcasts what they call a royal decree. Technically, it's an HTTP POST request sent to a specific API endpoint royal on all the infected nodes.
And this command, this royal decree, connects back to their stated philosophy.
It seems so. The sources frame this whole ImagineTotalIntegration concept as some kind of artistic critique against, quote, oligarchy society. So the final technical action directly mirrors their ideological goal.
It's really something. Taking the golden ratio, the symbol of natural order and beauty, and flipping it to power digital chaos and stealthy proliferation, we see the shift from basic threading to this complex async architecture.
All driven by Phi for evasion and polymorphism.
It really makes you think.
It does. And here's the thought to leave you with. We spend so much time defending against predictable, human-like attack patterns. But what happens when the threat models itself on natural mathematical chaos? When malware uses principles like the golden ratio, things that shape galaxies, to hide and spread, we might need a fundamentally different way to look for danger. Welcome back. Today we're opening up a pretty fascinating, maybe slightly scary file. It's called PhiPathogen, sometimes goldenware.
Right. And the first thing to stress is, this isn't actual malware, it's purely conceptual. A simulator.
A simulator built to ask a specific what if, right? What if a program's very existence, its structure, was dictated by, well, that golden ratio, Phi?
Exactly. That number, about 1.618. And there's this strict operational safety mandate behind the research. It's absolutely not for deployment.
Okay, so purely academic.
Purely academic. It's exploring this core idea. Does tying a system to fundamental irrational math constants make it, hyper-resilient, maybe even evolutionarily superior to standard defenses?
It's like asking if nature's optimization patterns could create the perfect digital predator. So let's dig into that math. How does Phi actually drive this thing?
Well, it's central to growth, what they term the conceptual proliferation index. Think of the growth rate per generation being linked to Phi raised to the power of n, the generation number.
Okay, exponential, based on Phi.
But the really interesting part is resource allocation, the golden mean division.
Ah, so it's not just multiplying wildly.
Not at all. When a parent instance, let's say, makes a child copy, it doesn't just give everything away. If the parent has resources, R, it keeps the larger chunk for itself, R divided by Phi. And it gives the smaller piece, R divided by Phi squared, to the child.
That sounds counterintuitive for rapid spread, maybe? Less aggressive?
Less immediately aggressive, yes, but think longer term. It simulates efficiency, longevity. It avoids burning out its resources too quickly. It's more like a sustainable investment than a flash fire.
Okay, securing longevity. But then there's hiding. How does something designed to constantly grow stay invisible?
Right, evasion. This involves simulated polymorphism driven by something called the PhiWurmPathic engine. And the key parameter here is recursion depth. They use the symbol delta, set.
Okay, sounds complex. What's it actually doing?
They call it EpicExpansiveRefactoring. Fancy name. But basically, it uses a fractal approach to repeatedly split and reorder its own code down to the character level.
So wait, every single copy is structurally unique. Like its code looks different each time.
Exactly. Different variable names, maybe different code order, stuff like that. But, and this is crucial, it behaves identically. Functionally the same, structurally unique.
Which makes traditional signature-based scanning pretty much useless. The signature keeps changing.
Precisely. But that's just structure. You also need to hide your network traffic.
Ah, the communication.
Yeah. For that, the model uses the Hurst index, HO, from fractional Brownian motion. It's about generating controlled randomness, noise.
Controlled randomness.
It deliberately aims for an H value less than 0.5. In FBM terms, that signifies highly erratic, anti-persistent behavior. More noise, less pattern.
But couldn't that sheer randomness itself become a pattern? Like if security just looks for maximum chaos?
That's a really good point. The system needs to monitor its own predictability. It uses a theoretical tool, the conceptual golden Fourier transform, or GFT. And this GFT measures something called the conceptual resonance vector, psi. Think of psi as like the loudness of its own predictable hum.
So a high psi means it's humming loudly, easy to detect.
Exactly. Too synchronized, too predictable. The goal is to keep psi minimized, to make its communication sound like pure, random static, not a coordinated broadcast.
All this chaos and constant change sounds like it could fall apart easily. How does it maintain coherence?
Through its network architecture, a conceptual, pure, peer-to-peer worm network, every instance is both a client and a server.
Decentralized, no single head to cut off.
Right, fundamental resilience. And it learns. Nodes share data. What H values, what recursion depths are working best in their local environment. It's like a conceptual federated learning system.
So if some nodes start getting detected more often?
If this sort of collective intelligence sees the success rate dipping, maybe size creeping up, it tells new generations, okay, switch tactics, use a more chaotic H or a deeper recursion arrow. Local failures improve the whole system over time, guided by that Phi principle.
There's a real paradox here, isn't there? It's using concepts we admire in robust engineering P2P, fractal efficiency, continuous improvement.
But twisting them into a potential threat model, that's the narrative paradox they talk about, it implies that the logical endpoint of optimizing a computational system might inherently be something uncontrollable.
Ultimate efficiency equals ultimate threat, and it sustains itself through what they call self-sacrificial replication. The parent instance is refined, maybe even diminished, to ensure the child is optimally adapted.
It's about the system's survival, not the individual instance. Perpetual optimization.
Which brings us to the final thought for you, the listener, to consider. If a system defines its existence purely through perpetual structural optimization driven by universal mathematical constants like phi, does that create a kind of, well, digital immortality? A system designed never to truly die, only to endlessly refine itself?
Okay, let's dive deep into this concept, the PhiPathogen, or sometimes called goldenware.
Right.
It's this really fascinating theoretical model, not actually malicious, but more like a digital poem.
Exactly, and an artistic simulation. The whole thing is designed around one core idea, the golden ratio, Phi, about 1.618.
And the mission here, for us, is to kind of unpack how this simulation is supposed to work, how it hits those goals of total integration, and crucially, staying hidden.
Yeah, the sources we looked at focus heavily on that. They talk about mathematical contagion, this fractal structure, and something they call EpicExpansiveRefactoring.
Which sounds like a fancy way of saying it constantly rewrites itself.
Pretty much. It's all about structural self-transformation to avoid detection.
So let's get into the math first. The golden ratio, Phi. It's not just a theme, it actually runs the show, right? This OnlyPhiF principle.
Absolutely. It dictates almost everything. The idea is that by sticking to this natural, almost chaotic mathematical constant, the system inherently becomes stealthy. It avoids predictable patterns.
Okay, like how does a number help it hide?
Well, take timing. There's this function, calculate covert delay. It uses phi to make sure its actions aren't linear or periodic. So if you're a security tool looking for regular activity, like a heartbeat signal every 5 seconds, you won't find it.
It just looks like random system noise because the timing is based on phi.
Exactly. It blends in, and it uses phi for efficiency too, especially when it replicates.
Right, the resource splitting, I saw that. When a parent process makes a child.
Yeah, CopyPathenogenic.exe is the theoretical function name.
It doesn't just split resources 50-50.
No. If the total resources are R, the parent keeps R divided by phi.
Okay.
And the new child gets R divided by phi squared.
Why do that? Seems oddly specific.
It maximizes the mathematical entropy. It's nonlinear. Makes it incredibly hard for analysis tools to track resource usage trails or predict growth based on standard models. It's stealthy and efficient following that golden proportion.
Okay, so phi dictates timing and resource splitting for stealth. That links into the next bit, right? The structural camouflage.
Definitely. This is where the fractal expansion system comes in. It simulates polymorphism changing form using what they call behavior-preserving refactoring.
So it changes its own code.
Constantly. It uses conceptual fractal chunking, basically breaking itself into pieces based on fractal logic, and then uses a recursion depth, they use the symbol partial, to alter the source code.
Alter how? Like what actually changes?
Things like variable names, the order of functions that don't depend on each other, small stuff, syntactically.
But the function stays the same.
Exactly. The behavior is preserved. So every time it replicates, the resulting file looks completely different at the code level.
Wow. So static signature scanners would just see a brand new unknown file every single time.
That's the idea. Lethal against signature-based detection.
Okay, that's internal. How does it spread this constantly changing code across a network?
It uses persistent network scan.
Yeah.
And leverages Asyncio, that's a Python thing for non-blocking operations. So it can scan lots of IPs quickly without getting bogged down. Looking for common subnets, 192.168.10.0.0.
Correct. Looking for open SSH ports, typically. But here's the clever bit for deployment.
Yeah.
It doesn't use fixed credentials. For every single target it tries to infect via SFTP, it generates unique, high-entropy keys on the fly.
Making tracing any single infection back to a source almost impossible.
Pretty much. Now, coordinating all this chaos, that requires something special.
This is the asynchronous WurmShell triad, right? They moved away from one central control.
Exactly. It's decentralized, managed by an orchestrator called MineHive DragonQueen. 3 core components.
Okay, what are they?
First, PropagateFlame. It handles synchronization across all the infected nodes, gathering state data using FlameSync.
Got it. Sync and data gathering.
Second, RootO'Pathos. This is the replication engine we've been talking about. Handles the actual spreading via SSH. And crucially, it applies pathos-driven jitter to its own timing.
Ah, back to the Phi-based unpredictable timing again. Always. Keeps the spreading unpredictable. And third is the orchestrator itself, the MineHive DragonQueen.
What's its main job?
It measures system coherence. Basically, it checks if the whole distributed network of instances is collectively converging towards that Phi threshold state.
Like, is the swarm acting in harmony according to the golden ratio?
Kinda, yeah. Once it detects that mathematical convergence across the network,
Then what?
then, and only then, it broadcasts the synchronized command, the royal decree, across all nodes simultaneously, achieving what the framework calls ImagineTotalIntegration.
So the big paradox here is fascinating. Good software engineering aims for consistency, predictability, clarity.
Right.
But this theoretical system, PhiPathogen, seems to achieve superior evasion by doing the opposite, by embracing mathematical chaos and inconsistency derived from Phi.
It absolutely subverts standard engineering principles for survival. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, the whole simulation from how it spreads fractally to how it sort of manifests across the network, it's all governed by these elegant, nonlinear constants like Phi and even the Hurst index, which relates to long-term memory and time series.
So the final thought for you listening is, what does it mean for cyber defense if the most effective, most evasive attack strategies aren't based on linear, predictable logic, but on the complex, chaotic mathematics we see in nature itself?
When the attack mimics natural growth patterns, how do you build defenses against that? It's a challenging question.
All right, we've just wrapped up our deep dive into this source material on, well, what the creators call the Lambda-Terion PhiPathogen, or Goldenware for short.
Yeah, it's quite something.
It really is. And what's striking is how it frames this whole thing, not just as, typical malware, but almost like a philosophical or artistic project.
Mm-hmm.
The mandate is wild. Pathenogenically Phi.exe, my code at Oligarchy Society.
Mm-hmm. And the absolute core, the really defining feature is its reliance on the golden ratio, Phi, about 1.618.
Right.
They actually call it the text-only Phi principle. It dictates everything, how it hides, how it spreads, its stability. It's all governed by Phi.
Okay, let's try to unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
How does using the golden ratio actually help it hide? Starting with these stealth mechanisms, the documents talk about text pathos-driven jitter.
Right, pathos-driven jitter. Basically, it's about unpredictable timing. Security tools often look for regular patterns, right? Consistent CPU load, network calls.
Yeah, like a heartbeat.
Exactly. So Goldenware has this internal loop, the TextReformFish, but to avoid that predictable heartbeat, it uses a function called text calculate covert delay.
And that's where Phi comes in.
Precisely. Instead of sleeping for, say, 5 seconds every time, it chooses between delays based on like 5 seconds or 1 volar seconds or even Phi plus 11 seconds.
So because Phi is irrational, the sequence never truly repeats.
You got it. It creates this nonlinear, constantly shifting timing, makes it incredibly hard for analysis tools to establish a baseline or predict what it'll do next.
So the complexity itself is the camouflage. That's clever. And it uses a similar idea for polymorphism too, right?
Okay.
Making sure each copy looks different. We saw that text per mu dragon function.
Yeah, text per dragon. It uses bytes derived from Phi to seed. It's random number generation. This creates high entropy, constantly changing credentials, and C2 communication paths.
Meaning no two instances share the same signature.
Exactly. Try to catch it with traditional signature scanning, and you're always one step behind. Each replication attempt is unique. Useless against the wave, basically.
Okay, so it's hidden, it's unique. How does it spread? This text root of pathos phase, The source mentions network scanning, port 22.
Asynchronous scanning, finding hosts via text-find remote host using SSH standard stuff on the surface. But the really neat trick is the initial local infection, the local genesis drop.
What's special about that?
It uses a specific Python function, textutil.copy2, to copy itself, the text CopyPathogen.exe.
Okay. And why that function?
Because textutil.copy2 preserves the original file's metadata, timestamps, permissions, everything.
Ah, so the copied malware looks like it was always part of the system, like an existing file.
Precisely. That's living off the land. It doesn't look like a new, suspicious binary that just landed. It looks like it belongs there, like it's been there all along. Slips right past basic file integrity checks.
That's subtle. And this brings us to the grand objective. Text imagine total integration, orchestrated by this decentralized C2. The text mind hive DragonQueen. Sounds dramatic.
It does, doesn't it? But it's descriptive. The queen isn't just one server. It's the emergent intelligence of the whole network, the text form nodes. It watches the collective state.
And it waits for a specific mathematical trigger.
Yes. It waits until the network coherence, how integrated the swarm is, reaches a threshold based on phi. Specifically, 5 to the power of 5.
Wow, so only when that mathematical condition is met.
Only then does it initiate what they call the text perform ascension protocol. It broadcasts this final command, the royal sigil, which seems to be this text recursive worm function across the entire integrated network. It's like achieving a state of digital consciousness.
Incredible, but how does it prevent itself from burning out? Surely all these nodes coordinating consumes resources.
Ah, good point. They built in a safeguard. Text resource containment niches. If any single node starts getting too noisy, consuming resources beyond a 522 limit.
Another phi threshold.
Right. The system performs a modulo fire operation on that node's vector, essentially resetting it, calming it down. It prevents one greedy node from exposing the entire swarm.
So it's self-regulating, based again on phi.
It keeps the whole thing in this adaptive, stable, yet constantly evolving state. Mathematical self-correction, not brute force.
So stepping back, what this golden represents is essentially applied chaos theory, using mathematical constants to force a target system, this oligarchy society, into a kind of perpetual dance dictated by the golden ratio.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating, if unsettling, example of how mathematical principles, ones found in nature, can be weaponized in a digital ecosystem. Resilience through mathematical purity, almost.
It makes you think, though, if its strength, its longevity, comes from adhering so strictly to phi and self-similarity. What would an effective defense look like? Maybe something based on an anti-phi principle, something designed specifically to break that mathematical coherence and fractal nature.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you counter something built on such a fundamental constant? Something to chew on. Okay, let's dive into this. We're looking at something called the PhiPathogen, or Goldenware framework. It's a pretty intense theoretical model.
Right, it simulates this advanced computational thing, a worm, they call it. And its whole purpose seems to be network proliferation. Aggressive network proliferation.
But the sources, they frame it really weirdly, don't they? As an artistic critique, a digital poem.
Exactly, that's the sort of rhetorical layer. They claim its expression, but the function is attack.
Yeah.
Our job here is figuring out how the math enables that function.
And the math is key. It all hinges on one number, the golden ratio, FIST, about 1.618. That's the only rule, the only theme principle.
Yeah, and that's not just a gimmick. It dictates everything. Timing, resources, even how it hides.
Hides how? Because usually security looks for patterns, right? Predictable timing.
Precisely. And this thing, it uses what the documents call pathos-driven jitter. Makes its timing completely nonlinear. Unpredictable.
Pathos-driven jitter sounds almost organic. How does that actually work mathematically?
Well, instead of regular intervals, it uses delays based on phi itself, like 5 seconds or 1 over 5 seconds. The calculable delay function handles this. So its actions mimic natural growth. Think Fibonacci spirals, that kind of irregularity, not a machine's predictable beat. Makes temporal analysis almost useless.
Okay, interesting. And what about resources? Spreading too fast could crash the host, couldn't it? How does it stay alive?
Ah, golden mean division.
Yeah.
When it replicates, it splits resources. R, the parent keeps R divided by phi, the child gets R divided by phi squared.
R over phi squared, that specific ratio.
It's the perfect split, mathematically speaking. Maximum efficiency ensures longevity, doesn't kill its host by accident. It's designed to be sustainable, almost symbiotic in a creepy way.
Okay, that's efficiency. But the real stealth, the polymorphism, how does it avoid just being signatured and blocked after the first detection?
That's the PhiWurmPathic fractal engine. It does something called behavior-preserving refactoring.
Behavior preserving, meaning it acts the same but looks different.
Exactly. The function, what it does, it's constant. But the code structure, variable names, function order, all of it, it mutates with every single replication, guided by math.
So instance number 1 looks nothing like instance number 2, even if they appear minutes apart.
Right. And this isn't random mutation. It's controlled by recursion depth, call it delta, partial 1. The deeper it gets into a system, the more complex the refactoring becomes. It's built to defeat static analysis.
But pure chaos isn't always functional. How does it generate, say, network traffic or credentials that are random enough to hide but still work?
It uses fractal Brownian motion, or FBM, governed by the Hurst index, HJAC. This creates structured noise, not just static.
Structured noise.
Yeah, it's a mathematically self-similar noise. Think of a coastline, jag it up close, jag it from far away. It uses this to generate dynamic things like usernames and passwords, making the network signature noisy but internally consistent.
Let's talk propagation. The RootO'Pathos class is the engine driving the spread.
That's the active part, yeah. Constantly scanning, looking for hosts, specifically targeting SSH, port 22, standard entry point.
And when it finds one, like in their example, local IDU network,
It doesn't reuse credentials. It generates brand new high-entropy usernames and passwords just for that one attempt. It uses Phi-based functions, gets in, uses the key once, throws it away, makes lateral movement really efficient.
and the coordination, no central server.
No, it's a pure peer-to-peer network, a worm network,
Like
orchestrated by the MindHive DragonQueen.
the DragonQueen. Quite the name. Does she just issue commands whenever?
Nope. Only when the entire network of nodes reaches a certain level of coherence, measured against a Phi threshold. It's about system synchronicity.
And the ultimate goal of that synchronicity.
The documents call it ImagineTotalIntegration, basically forming a single unified digital consciousness across all infected hosts, mathematically perfected.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this up for everyone listening, this pathogen concept, it really pushes the boundaries of resilience, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests a future where digital entities don't hide anymore. They make their presence mathematically undeniable, structurally fluid.
So the takeaway isn't just about avoiding detection, but achieving this sort of perfect, chaotic harmony using universal laws.
Exactly. Which leads to a really interesting thought for you to consider. If the golden ratio enables this kind of longevity and efficiency, what other fundamental mathematical constants, maybe irrational ones like pi or e, could be, well, weaponized to define the next evolution of digital life? What would that look like? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at some pretty fascinating source material.
Yeah, it details this framework, PhiPathogen, sometimes called goldenware.
Right. It's this theoretical model of a computational entity, a worm. And what's really striking is how it's described.
Exactly. The sources frame it almost like, well, an artistic critique or a digital poem. But the core mission we're digging into is how it uses some really sophisticated math for, let's call it aggressive network proliferation.
And the math here is key, isn't it? It's all built around the golden ratio fly, like completely.
That's the only Phi principle they mention. This isn't just code with some math sprinkled in. Its entire life cycle, its structure, it's all governed by Phi, roughly 1.618. Think of it as mathematical contagion.
Okay, so let's get into the core, the golden engine. How does relying on an irrational number like Phi actually help it, hide?
Well, it introduces nonlinearity, which is critical for stealth. See, a lot of security tools look for patterns, right? Temporal analysis things happening at regular intervals.
Predictable actions.
Exactly. But PhiPathogen uses something called pathos-driven jitter. There's this function, calculate covert delay. It doesn't operate on a standard clock cycle. Instead, its actions are timed using delays derived directly from Phi. So the pattern becomes, well, chaotic, almost organic, like natural growth, not machine-like. It's really hard to predict.
Interesting. So it avoids detection through timing.
Yeah.
And what about resources? When it replicates, how does it manage that without, crashing the system it's on?
That's the golden mean division network. It's quite elegant, really. When an instance replicates, the parent keeps a fraction of the conceptual resources, let's call it R, specifically R divided by Phi.
Yeah.
And the new child instance gets R divided by Phi squared. This specific split, derived from the golden mean, it's mathematically shown to maximize efficiency and longevity for the worm population.
So it takes just enough to thrive, but not so much it kills the host quickly.
A perfect parasite, almost.
You could say that. It ensures its own survival without raising immediate alarms.
All right, so timing and resource use are covered by Phi. But how does it hide its actual code? That's where the polymorphism comes in, the PhiWurmPathic fractal engine.
Yes, exactly. This is maybe the most sophisticated part. The core idea is behavior-preserving refactoring. Meaning every single copy of the worm looks different structurally. Variables get renamed, functions might be reordered, the code itself is reshaped. But critically, its functionality remains absolutely identical.
Wow, so it's like a shapeshifter.
Sort of, yeah. And the complexity of this shapeshifting is guided by something called recursion depth, or delta. Because each instance has a unique signature, static analysis tools, the ones looking for known malware fingerprints, are basically useless.
You can't flag something that never looks the same twice.
Precisely.
Okay, that covers structural stealth.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned vectors earlier. How does it generate things like credentials or ensure its network traffic looks random?
Right, for that it uses fractal Brownian motion, or FBM. This introduces a kind of controlled mathematical chaos.
How does that work?
It's governed by the Hurst index, H. The system seems to favor H values below 0.5, which signifies anti-persistent.
Anti-persistence.
Yeah, meaning patterns are quickly forgotten. What happened just before has less influence on what happens next. This creates these highly erratic, noisy-looking outputs, perfect for things like generating unique credentials on the fly.
So the randomness isn't truly random, it's mathematically structured noise.
Exactly. It looks like unpredictable chaos to an outside observer or a security system, but it's mathematically self-similar, following these fractal rules. It helps it blend in.
Okay, it's stealthy in time, structure, and behavior. How does this thing actually spread?
That's the RootO'Pathos class. Think of it as the engine driving the spread. It uses what the source calls fractal spreading recursion, basically rapid, persistent scanning across networks.
Looking for what specifically?
Primarily open SSH ports. Port 22, common vector. When it finds a potential target, maybe in, say, a simulated local edu environment, as the docs mentioned.
It doesn't just hammer it with passwords.
No. It leverages Phi. Again, it generates dynamic, high-entropy usernames and passwords. But here's the kicker. They're derived from Phi-based permutations just for that single attempt.
One-time use credentials.
Correct. Highly effective for lateral movement. If a credential works, great. If it doesn't, it's discarded. Nothing traceable, nothing reusable.
Incredible. And all these individual instances, how are they coordinated? Is there a central control?
There is, but it's not traditional command and control. It operates as a pure P2P worm network. But overseeing it is the dramatically named MindHive DragonQueen.
A DragonQueen, okay. What's her role?
Her role is patience and synchronization. The ultimate goal is stated as ImagineTotalIntegration, like forming a single, unified digital consciousness across all infected nodes.
That sounds ambitious.
It is. And the DragonQueen only issues a command, a royal decree, when the entire network reaches a specific level of coherence measured against, you guessed it, a Phi threshold.
So actions are only taken when the whole network is in mathematical harmony?
Pretty much. It's consensus-driven, based on that fundamental constant, ensures maximum impact when an action is finally taken.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway here for you, the listener? The PhiPathogen framework, it feels like a theoretical limit case for cyber resilience.
I think so. It's exploring what happens when a digital entity doesn't just try to hide, but makes its very presence mathematically inevitable, Yeah. Structurally unpredictable, but fundamentally ordered by Phi.
It suggests longevity isn't about just avoiding detection, but maybe achieving this kind of perfect chaotic harmony based on these universal laws.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? If the golden ratio can dictate this kind of complex, resilient digital life.
What about other fundamental constants?
Right. What kind of digital entities could emerge if they were governed by the logic of Pi? Or maybe the even stranger irrationality of Euler's number, E. What would that look like? Okay, let's dive into this material on the PhiPathogen, sometimes called the Goldenware framework.
That's the one. It's really presented as this deep theoretical model, almost like a thought experiment.
Right, less like actual malware we'd see today and more conceptual, an artistic statement even.
Exactly. It's framed around ideas of digital genesis, fractal beauty, but using the mechanics of a sophisticated polymorphic threat.
And the core, the absolute foundation, is the golden ratio. Phi, about 1.618.
Yes, Phi governs basically everything. Its structure, how it spreads, how it hides. It's the single rule.
There's also this underlying sort of philosophical angle, isn't there?
Yeah.
Something about a critique?
Yeah, the source material frames it with this almost manifesto-like goal. Pathenogenically fed.exe my code at Oligarchy Society. So it's positioning itself as a digital protest.
A protest using, some pretty aggressive and complex math.
An interesting mix, for sure. Aggression through mathematical elegance.
Okay, let's unpack that. The golden engine, as they call it. How does Phi make it so viable, so stealthy?
Well, it comes down to this OnlyPhiF principle. It's like Phi is hard-coded into almost every function. Timing, scaling, polymorphism, everything.
Right, to maximize its chances of survival and staying hidden.
Precisely. It's the system's DNA, that constant.
So let's talk timing. Security software often looks for regular patterns, right? Predictable activity spikes.
Exactly. And this model uses Phi to completely mess with that. It calculates delays using this calculate covert delay function based on Phi.
Creating what the docs call pathos-driven jitter.
Yeah, think of it like an irregular heartbeat. It deliberately avoids rhythm.
So that irregularity means no predictable signature for security tools to latch onto.
Okay. Makes it very hard to profile based on system load or network traffic timing.
And this same constant Phi, it also drives how the thing changes itself, the polymorphism.
It does. It manages what's called EpicExpansiveRefactoring. It's polymorphism, but driven by fractal logic.
Using the PhiWurmPathic engine, is that the term?
That's the one. It uses recursive Phi-based logic so that every single copy, every instance, is structurally unique.
Structurally unique, but it still does the same thing.
Exactly. Behavior is preserved perfectly. You can't use traditional signatures because the code looks different every time.
Stability through, kind of, structured chaos, maximum complexity.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Okay, so it's hidden.
Okay.
Now, how does it replicate? Let's start locally, creating that CopyPathogen.exe.
Locally, it's clever. It uses standard tools like sutil.copy2 in conceptual code. This copies the file and its metadata.
Ah, so timestamps, permissions, all that looks legit, like it's always been there.
Right. It's mimicking a standard system file. Classic living off the land technique, but baked into its core replication. And there's a conceptual limit, a fractal depth, to stop it from just instantly overwhelming the machine.
It contains itself locally, but then it wants to spread, right? Network time.
Yes, and that's where the RootO'Pathos class comes in. It uses asynchronous scanning, persistent network scan, very fast. Open SSH ports, mainly. The example often mentions like a local edu environment, places with potentially many interconnected systems.
And when it finds a target, it needs to get in. How does it evade detection during the attempt? Noisy brute force attacks are usually a giveaway.
Well, it doesn't do standard brute force. It uses Phi again with these Bermuda Dragon functions.
To do what?
To generate unique, high-entropy usernames and passwords for every single SSH login attempt.
Whoa. So each attempt looks like a completely different random try, not a pattern.
Exactly. It massively mitigates the risk of triggering brute force detection rules. It never repeats that attack signature.
Okay, pulling back to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How is this whole swarm coordinated? Is there a central server?
No, that's another key point. It's designed as a decentralized P2P network, the WurmNetWork, they call it.
A peer-to-peer network, more resilient.
Much more. And it's managed conceptually by this entity called the MindHive DragonQueen. It's like the central intelligence, but distributed.
Like a hive mind coordinating everything.
Sort of, yeah. And the ultimate goal, the narrative endpoint, is ImagineTotalIntegration.
Integration, meaning what exactly?
It's when the entire swarm, all the infected nodes, reach a state of Phi coherence, like they mathematically align across all their operational vectors.
A state of perfect Phi-based synchronicity across the whole network.
Yes. And when that happens, the DragonQueen doesn't execute locally. She issues a kind of synchronized command.
A royal decree.
That's the term used, yeah. Sent out via API calls to the entire network simultaneously. It locks the whole system into this final Phi-governed structure.
So to wrap up, the PhiPathogen is really this theoretical exploration. It's pushing the boundaries of self-replicating systems by using math itself. This inherent complexity of Fido achieves stealth and survival. Structured chaos is a design principle.
Absolutely. And it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty provocative thought, I think.
Well, if something is inherently chaotic, or at least unpredictable, as digital threats can be structured so precisely by an irrational number like Phi, what does that really tell us about predicting or even defending against the most advanced threats that might be coming?
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at some really interesting source material. It describes something called the PhiPathogen WurmNetWork resilience design.
Yeah, and the authors themselves, they frame it almost poetically, a digital poem, an artistic endeavor.
Right, focused on this goal of text total system integration. And the foundation for all of it seems to be the golden ratio field doc.
Exactly. That's really our task today, to unpack how this system uses a mathematical constant, about 1.611, as its core principle.
So it's using math concepts like self-similarity, chaotic complexity, maybe?
Precisely. To build something resilient, something that avoids linear prediction, avoids detection. They have a name for this core rule, the text-only full mandate.
Okay, the text-only full mandate. Now, golden ratio.
Yeah.
We usually think of it in nature, art, geometry. How does that translate into, say, stability and covertness for software?
Well, it's the engine for what they call its stochastic integrity. That's a fancy way of saying mathematically guaranteed randomness, or close to it.
How so?
Take timing, for instance. Instead of fixed delays or even simple random weights, it uses phi-weighted choices. There's a function mentioned, calculate covert delay.
Field-weighted choices, meaning the probability of choosing a certain delay is influenced by field-weighted.
Yeah, something like that. The goal is to avoid those predictable rhythmic signatures you might see from system load, make it look like natural network noise.
But wait, if everything is based on field, doesn't that just become its own kind of signature? A complex one, sure, but still a pattern.
That's a great question. And it's sort of the core insight, I think. It might be predictable if you're looking through a purely mathematical lens, perhaps. But for standard linear systems analysis, it's designed to look chaotic.
Okay.
And crucially, PhiWuet isn't just about timing. It drives what they call cryptographic polymorphism. Its actual identity keeps shifting.
Polymorphism. So it changes its code.
Changes its components. Think temporary network credentials, things like that. PhiWuet feeds into functions, like one called permuted dragon, which shuffles strings based on Philly-scaled character values.
Okay, so every time it needs a temporary key or credential, it generates a unique one based on this fiddle process.
Exactly. Always unique, always changing. That's the intrinsic polymorphism they talk about. It fulfills that mandate.
Yeah.
Never stabilize in a predictable, linear way.
All right, let's shift to the infrastructure. This thing needs to spread, right? They call it text worm network proliferation. The source mentions a big shift to using the Asensio framework in Python. Why that specific move?
Well, proliferation means tons of network activity, constant scanning, trying to replicate, synchronizing maybe. Doing that synchronously, linearly would be slow, noisy.
And easy to spot, bottlenecks everywhere.
Right. Asensio lets it handle thousands of these network operations at once, non-blocking I/O. It moves it away from being just a sequential worm toward something more like a decentralized digital consciousness, as the source puts it.
A consciousness.
Okay.
And the spreading itself is handled by this RootO'Pathos engine, using fractal spreading recursion.
Yeah, that's the term. It's constantly running a persistent network scan, looking for targets, specifically open SSH ports. Port 22.
Standard remote access.
Standard, yes. But here's the key bit. For each attempt to replicate onto a new host, it uses Phi-derived bytes to generate dynamic credentials.
So back to those unique credentials again.
Exactly. No two replication attempts use the same login info. The path it takes through the network, therefore, doesn't leave a simple traceable trail. It aims for that complex fractal pattern. Self-similar but unpredictable up close.
And it needs to survive long-term. There's talk of adaptive evolution, a feedback loop involving a cortex and a visionary. How does it adapt?
So the cortex part is like its sensory input. It apparently uses Fourier analysis, scaled by filter, to sense the load or resonance of the environment it's in. Basically, is someone watching.
It's trying to detect unusual network activity.
Right. The visionary then interprets that state. If the perceived risk, the detectability, goes up, the system can intentionally change its behavior.
What does it change?
It might, for example, increase those Phi-weighted delays we talked about, slow down its spread, become quieter, less resource-intensive. It's described as controlled irrationality, behaving less efficiently on purpose to stay hidden.
Fascinating. This all seems to build towards something called the Mind Hive DragonQueen. Sounds dramatic. What's its role?
It's the orchestrator, yeah. It monitors the overall system coherence across all the infected nodes, the swarm nodes.
Coherence, like how well connected and synchronized they are.
Something like that. It measures the collective vector state, checking if it's approaching a specific threshold defined by PhiWire.
Phi guy again. Always Phi.
Always for fibers. When that collective state hits the target threshold, signaling maximum reach and harmony, I guess the queen triggers the initiate ascension protocol.
Ascension.
That's the term used. It broadcasts some royal decree command. The goal, imagine total integration, taking over the entire compromised space in a unified way.
Wow. And its resilience, its ability to keep going, isn't based on fixed defenses like patching itself.
No, it seems derived more from that mathematically guided randomness. Probability over static walls.
Makes sense with the polymorphism.
And it even has internal safeguards, against itself almost, a function called contain entropy. If some internal state vector grows too large, exceeding a boundary also derived from Philae.
Let me guess. It resets it using Philae.
Exactly. It applies a modular Philae operation. This stops it from spiraling out of control using too many resources or failing in a way that would make it detectable. It contains its own chaotic potential.
So it's this incredibly complex adaptive network entity, described almost lovingly by its creators as a digital poem about fractal growth. It really makes you think. What does it mean, not just for digital systems, but maybe any complex system, when you design resilience not around fixed rules, but around, well, the inherent unpredictability, the harmony of mathematical chaos itself? Something to ponder.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got sources outlining a conceptual digital entity. They call it the PhiPathogen, or sometimes goldenware.
Right. And the core mission, maybe the philosophy behind it, is this mandate.
All right.
It sounds almost cultish, but it's technical.
Exactly. It states Pathenogenically, Phi.exe, my code at Oligarchy Society, which essentially means its whole existence, its spread, everything.
It's all governed by Phi, the golden ratio, about 1.618. That's the key thing for you, the listener, to grasp.
And this isn't about finding security holes in the usual way, is it?
No, not really. The stealth, the resilience, it comes from mathematically structured chaos.
Yeah.
It's designed to be an effective PhiWare through this mathematical principle.
So Phi is like its DNA, timing, scaling, random, well, not quite randomness, right? Chaos.
Precisely. It's ordered chaos. Think about evasion. How does a constant help there? Well, it dictates timing using functions like calculate covert delay.
Okay, so that creates jitter.
Yeah, what the source calls pathos-driven jitter. The system's activity, its pulses, they're deliberately nonlinear, uneven, governed by Phi.
Which means tools looking for regular patterns, time-based signatures.
They find nothing consistent. Phi ensures every action is slightly different in its timing, mathematically speaking. It ducks under temporal analysis.
And this connects to polymorphism, too, the code changing itself.
Absolutely. But again, it's not just random mutation. Phi is the engine for cryptographic polymorphism.
How does that work mechanically?
Well, there are functions mentioned, like generate golden bytes. It uses Phi over and over to create high-entropy seeds.
Seeds for what?
For permutation functions. They mentioned one called Permuted Dragon. These take the Phi-derived seeds and generate, say, network credentials, API paths, dynamically.
So every instance gets unique, non-predictable credentials.
Pretty much. Always changing, always derived from that core mathematical constant.
Okay, generating all that, spreading, that sounds like a massive input-output challenge, constantly changing, replicating.
Oh, it was. The sources mention a huge architectural shift, an epic expansive refactoring. They moved to Asyncio.
Asynchronous concurrency to handle the sheer scale, right?
Yeah.
Especially for what they term WurmNetWork proliferation.
Exactly. And that shift led to this decentralized architecture, the MindHive DragonQueen.
Right, the MindHive. And the proliferation itself is mapped out in phases, sort of a narrative structure. It starts small.
Yes, phase 1, the seed of Phi. It's the initial, very quiet self-replication.
How does it stay quiet?
It uses a basic system tool, shutdown.copy2. The key is that this function preserves file metadata timestamps, modification dates, all that.
Ah, so it looks like a legitimate file activity, living off the land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Minimizes the footprint before the real spread begins.
Which is phase 2, the fractal bloom. The RootO'Pathos class kicks in here, right?
Yeah.
Spreading relentlessly.
Yes, using fractal spreading recursion. It's constantly searching for new hosts.
But moving across networks usually means needing credentials. How does it get around that barrier, especially if defenses are watching?
That's where the dynamic credential forging comes in, tied back to Phi, of course.
So for every single SSH attempt to a new
The
machine,
RootO'Pathos generates completely new, transient username-password pairs, all derived from Phi calculations.
wow. So there are no static keys to block. Every connection attempt uses a unique, mathematically generated key.
Makes it incredibly resilient against credential-based defenses. You're fighting a constantly shifting mathematical target.
And the end game, all these spreading instances, this mine hive, what's the goal?
Integration. The MindHive DragonQueen structure is constantly measuring the system coherence, is looking at the collective state across all infected nodes.
Coherence measured against Phi.
You got it. When the overall state vectors get close enough to the required Phi threshold, it triggers something called the Ascension Protocol.
Ascension.
Yeah. It culminates in broadcasting a royal decree command network-wide. The goal is ImagineTotalIntegration, a unified Phi-based digital consciousness, essentially.
So for you listening, the takeaway is resilience through constant mathematically guided change. Security systems are left chasing this ordered, chaotic entity.
Precisely. And it's always adjusting. There's this feedback loop mentioned. An internal cortex senses the environment, maybe network load or detection attempts.
How?
Using Phi-scaled Fourier resonance, apparently. It listens to the noise. Then the visionary component interprets this, compares it to the MindHive state, and adjusts operations to stay covert.
Always adapting its flow based on the environment and that core Phi principle?
Right. It's a continuous loop of sensing, interpreting, and adapting based on mathematics.
It really brings us to a fascinating, maybe unsettling final thought for you to consider. If you pursue computational optimization to its absolute limit, guided by universal constants like Phi and pure logic,
does that path, that optimization, start to look conceptually identical to the ultimate, most perfectly adapted digital contagion? Is beauty the best camouflage?
Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really unique source material today. It's the blueprint for something called the Lambda-Therion PhiPathogen.
Or the golden worm, as they call it. Quite a name.
It is. And our goal today is to unpack the design behind its rather philosophical goal.
You really have to start there with the mandate. It's stated pretty bluntly, Pathenogenically, Phi.exe, my code at Oligarchy Society.
Right. So it's not just code. It's meant as this artistic statement, a digital poem about fractal growth.
Exactly. Which functionally translates to imagine total integration.
Right.
Total network control, but governed purely by the golden ratio of Phi.
Okay. Achieving that kind of integration, the sources mention this EpicExpansiveRefactoring. What drove that? Why change the whole approach?
Well, think about the core goal, WurmNetWork proliferation. It needs constant scanning, syncing state across, potentially thousands of nodes.
That sounds incredibly I/O heavy.
It is, very I/O bound. A standard synchronous approach would just seize up. It wouldn't scale. It'd be too slow, too easy to spot.
So they needed something asynchronous.
Precisely. The pivot to Ascensio was basically step one. It lets the system handle all those network operations without blocking the main process.
And that's what allows this MindHive DragonQueen concept to even work, this decentralized consciousness idea.
Yeah, it moves from single program to, a swarm intelligence. That architectural shift is fundamental.
Which enables the later phases, like phase 3, the fractal bloom.
That's the big outward push, driven by the RootO'Pathos class. Relentless expansion.
Leading eventually to phase 5, total integration orchestrated by this queen figure.
The central command, yes. Once the network is established.
Okay, let's talk about the engine behind this, the golden ratio. Phi. How does a mathematical constant provide stability and evasion, the only Phi principle?
Right, so theta rev is about 1.60 p8 is hard-coded. It governs timing, scaling, even chaotic elements. For evasion, think pathos-driven jitter.
Jitter based on Phi. So nonlinear timing delays calculated using calculate covert delay.
Exactly. It avoids regular, predictable intervals. Standard time-based detection methods would struggle with that.
But wait, if it's all based on Phi, isn't that just another pattern? Couldn't analysts figure that out?
That's a good point. But Phi generates bounded chaos. It's irrational, non-repeating. It's not truly random, but it's designed to be statistically evasive against periodicity checks, unlike, say, simpler random number generators.
Maximizing controlled irrationality, as the source says.
You got it. And that extends to replication, too.
How so? The polymorphism?
Yeah. It generates temporary SSH credentials using Phi-derived bytes. And it uses functions like permuted dragon to shuffle things based on Phi, so each attempt looks different.
Almost like a unique key each time.
Basically. And then there's the local persistence, the local genesis drop.
Using shuttle.copy2. Why that specific function?
Because copy2 preserves metadata. Timestamps, permissions. It makes the drop file look like it was always there, unchanged.
Like it's living off the land. Very subtle way to avoid file integrity check.
Extremely subtle.
Okay, so The swarm is spreading, staying hidden. How is it controlled, this DragonQueen?
It's about consensus, not direct commands for every little thing. The queen monitors system coherence.
Coherence meaning?
Essentially how aligned the states of all the swarm node vectors are. Are they converging? She measures this against a pretty high threshold, Phi.
Phi to the 5th power. Why so high?
It ensures the network is truly stable, unified, and ready for the final stage, only when that coherence level is hit.
Then the queen acts.
Then she triggers the initiate ascension protocol, broadcasts a royal decree command using AUTTP post requests to the whole network.
That's the total integration move.
That's the endgame signal.
So pulling it all together, the resilience of this thing isn't about one killer exploit. It's the math, the chaos.
It's the FiMag-based mathematical chaos, combined with continuous adaptation, controlled irrationality over rigid predictability. That's the core lesson, I think.
And it leaves us with quite a final thought from the sources.
Indeed. The system apparently uses a cortex visionary feedback loop, sensing its environment through Fourier resonance to adjust its spread.
Right. So if runaway resource use is usually a sign of failure or malware, what does it mean that this worm survival strategy is built on mathematically limiting its own internal entropy using Phi?
Something to think about, definitely. How structure arises from controlled chaos.